Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, 8th chapter by Vidyaranya Swami, and this is the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Kutastha Chaitanyam is pure consciousness, same as Sakshi Chaitanyam, and this chapter deals with the how to distinguish the pure consciousness from the reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa. As we are dealing with the world, and the Jiva constitutes the pure consciousness, and the medium, reflecting medium, the Buddhi, and the reflection, because the Buddhi by itself is inert, is now activated by the reflection of the consciousness, just as the moon has become a luminous entity by reflecting the sunlight. Same way, Buddhi has become a conscious entity by reflecting the light of consciousness, and that's called Chidabhasa. So I am alive only because of the reflection of the consciousness. So the original consciousness is nothing to do with that. Original consciousness is all-pervading, infinite, pure consciousness, but that part of the pure consciousness that as though falling on the local body, that is local Buddhi, and Buddhi being a subtle material has a capacity to reflect, and therefore it reflects the consciousness, and therefore the Buddhi now also appears to be a conscious entity due to the reflection process. So the consciousness doesn't belong to the Buddhi, it is as though borrowed from the pure consciousness by reflecting it. Just as the luminosity doesn't belong to the moon, it is a borrowed luminosity by reflecting the sunlight. And the problem is there are two lights when we are looking at the sun. One is the sunlight that is falling on that, which that part of the sunlight that is falling on the moon, we call it a Sakshi. In contrast to that part of the sunlight that is falling on the Mars, which is different from that part of the sun that's falling on the moon. Because this is falling on the moon and that's falling on the Mars. But the sunlight itself cannot be parted. It is a homogeneous uniform. But at the same time, for the purpose of distinction, we say this is Sakshi, that which is falling on part of the moon. This is Sakshi that's falling on part of this local body, mind, intellect, that is called the Jiva. It has become a Jiva by reflecting the consciousness. So nature of the light is to reflect whenever there is a reflecting medium is there. Reflecting medium nature is to reflect whatever light that falls on it. And this light of consciousness falling on this one, because consciousness is infinite, it cannot but fall on the Buddhi, and Buddhi cannot but reflect. Therefore, Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness, also arises with the Buddhi. Where is a Jiva? Jiva is a notion in the mind of the Buddhi, not in the mind of the Buddhi. Buddhi is a mind in the Buddhi, that I am, not knowing that the light of consciousness is coming from the pure. The Buddhi thinks I am self-conscious entity. Consciousness is coming from me, which is different from the consciousness of the other fellow, and I want to analyze what is that consciousness. That's what the Buddhi says. A scientist wants to investigate what is consciousness by using what? By using objective tools that not amenable to analyze consciousness, because I am conscious of the object because of the consciousness only. So I cannot use the grosser tools to analyze the very subtlest thing. Even the Buddhi itself, I cannot use the gross tools. And I say everybody has a Buddhi, but they don't know how to analyze Buddhi. Buddhi means intellect, but intellect himself is not cannot analyze, and the intellects, the thought arises in the intellect, and thought itself they cannot analyze. So objective tools are not amenable to analyze the subject I am. All that, that's why Vedanta becomes a pramana. And this pure consciousness getting reflected by the Chidabhasa, reflecting the local buddhi and forming a reflection, and the reflected buddhi, reflected consciousness in the buddhi makes the buddhi as though it is a conscious entity. And that conscious entity of the buddhi, due to its reflection of the pure consciousness, not knowing that the consciousness is coming from the original, thinks that I am an independent conscious entity. And that's why you are independent conscious, he is independent conscious, everybody thinks they are independent conscious entities, because pure consciousness is getting reflecting in all other, the local buddhis. Therefore, the consciousness itself is nothing to do with the pure consciousness, nothing to do with this. Sunlight has nothing to do with illuminating the moon, illuminating this one. It is sunshine is shining. It's my glory to shine, and it's just shining. In its presence, moon is getting reflecting moon sunlight, and Mars is reflecting sunlight, Venus is reflecting sunlight, because they are not self-luminous, therefore they are borrowed luminosity. So they are shining in the sky by using borrowed luminosity. But if the moon forgets that luminosity that I have is borrowed one coming from the original consciousness, and thinks I am a self-conscious entity and behaves as though I am different from the Mars, I am different from the moon and all that. Buddhi is different, body is different, but consciousness cannot be different. I am only reflecting consciousness. It's a conscious entity that thinks that I am different from the other conscious entities. Buddhi itself doesn't do. Buddhi is inert. So it's a conscious entity that thinks. This is a Chidabhasa called Abhasavada. Now Vidyaranya talks about the Avachedavada and Abhasavada, two theories of the Vedanta. In fact, three theories. One is Avachedavada, another called Abhasavada, and Bimba Pratibimbavada. There is not much difference between the Abhasavada that I just discussed and Bimba Pratibimbavada. Bimba Pratibimba is pure consciousness, and you bring a mirror, and in the mirror I want to see my face, and I cannot see my face, and when I look into the mirror I see an image, and when I look at the image I see I am seeing my face. I cannot see my face. I am only looking at the image of my face. But looking through the image of my face in the mirror, I adjust my face or do something on my face if there is some black spot or something, or I cover and I can see if my eyes are red and so on and so forth. I am dealing with looking at the Pratibimbam, but what I am doing is Bimbam. Bimbam is original. And original face cannot be seen by itself without a mirror. Eyes cannot see eyes. Eyes can see other eyes, but I cannot see my own eyes. I need a mirror to see my eyes. Mirror is only brings a pratibimbam, and same way the pure consciousness and instead of reflected consciousness, a reflected image is a jiva. That's what is the bimba pratibimbavada. There is a third one which is called Avachedavada, and Avachedavada and the Abhasavada, there have been arguments. Avachedavada is coming from the as though enclosed, and the enclosure is like a pot space, and pot space and their space is not getting reflected, it's only enclosed in the walls of the pot. So the consciousness is enclosed in the buddhi is a jiva according to Avacheda. So I said, I can explain everything. Why do you need a third factor? Because there are only two there. What are the two things? Pure consciousness and enclosed consciousness. They forget the walls. So pure consciousness and enclosed consciousness. And this Now you are bringing a third factor, that is the pure consciousness and the inert medium and reflection. This is only a simple statements of called prakriyas. Prakriya means only for the how you classify, and sometimes it's convenient to think in terms of pot space and merging into total space. That analogy Gaudapada uses in the Mandukya Karika. Shankara uses both Avachedavada as well as Abhasavada. Only later some of the Acharyas started distinguishing, and Avachedavada is better than Abhasavada, Abhasavada is better than Avachedavada. In some cases it's easy to interpret one way or the other, but these are all prakriyas. Prakriya means methodology of teaching what it is. Who is Jiva? Who is Ishvara? So according to the Abhasavada that we are talking about, the Jiva is nothing but local reflection in the local mind, and that's called Vyashti. Vyashti means individual minds getting reflected, and that is called the Chidabhasa reflection, and therefore Vyashti. Vyashti means individual, and that's why individuality comes. I am different, you are different, he is different, and so on and so forth comes from because of the local reflections. That is how Jiva arises. And Ishvara arises from the Samashti. So when the totality of all minds put together, if there is one, and that's what is called Maya, and in the Maya, reflection of pure consciousness is what is called Ishvara. Ishvara is actually reflection in the Maya itself, but Maya without the impurities of Sattva, the Rajo and Samo Guna, only pure Sattva Guna Pradhana Maya, in the Bimba, the reflection of that is Ishvara. Sat, the Sat aspect stands, the Sattva aspect stands for knowledge. Therefore, since it's a pure knowledge, pure Sattvam, therefore Ishvara is Sarvajnaha, Sarvasektiman, all that attributes that we do in the temple. We talk about Ashtottara Namavali is nothing but attributes of the reflection of pure consciousness in the Suddha Sattva Maya. That's Ishvara. So from the Abhasavada, it's a reflection. Jiva is the local reflection at the Vyashti level, and Ishvara is the global reflection at the Samashti level, and Jagat is all the inert things, including the subtle as well as gross material and the world. All put together comes under Jagat. So Jiva, Ishvara, Jagat, all are three involved by reflection of that. How does Avachedavada explain this? Avachedavada is also same way, in that Jiva is enclosure in the local equipment. Avacheda is enclosure in the local mind is Jiva, just as local pot is Jiva, and total is nothing but reflection of in the totality. What in the 6th chapter it was covered as though Mega Akasha, and reflection of Mega Akasha is Ishvara, and the reflection in the Samashti, and that inclusion in the Samashti is Ishvara. So somewhat parallel system is there in the Avachedavada. So from sloka from 27 on, we are dealing with the up to almost the end of it. We are dealing with the Abhasavada versus Avachedavada, and Vidyaranya comes up from the Abhasavada, and the Purvapakshi is presented of the Avachedavada and shows that Abhasavada is better than Avachedavada. Abhasavada's reflection theory is better than inclusion theory. And in the last example he gave is, if I have why do you need a third factor? That was a question by the Avacheda. I can explain everything by just buddhi enclosing a consciousness, which is essentially Avachedam, and this enclosure like a pot enclosing the space. Pot can move around, and along with it pot space also is moving around for different lokas and all that. So I don't need another third factor reflection. That's what the objection was. Then objection was asked is, how do you explain the walls about it? So wall is nothing but, according to you, the wall, the consciousness is also pervading in the wall also. Like pot walls is also in the consciousness only. According to the theory, the whole universe is nothing but consciousness, Brahman, because Prajnanam Brahma, everything is in consciousness. So consciousness is also in the pot, so there is no Jiva there. So according to you, then even pot walls also should be a Jiva also. So that was essentially the objection by the Chidabhasavadins, Abhasavadins. For that, he says, no, there is a purity in the buddhi, there is no purity in the walls, in the pot walls. Therefore, buddhi is different in terms of enclosing, because it encloses in the purified walls compared to impurity walls. So therefore, the impurity walls, there is no Jiva, and there is a Jiva in the buddhi. That was his answer. Then he gives an example in order to counter that. This is the presentation of, I have two measures measuring the paddy. So what is called what do you call manam? That means measuring device, and I can made up of either wood or shining copper. Now, from the point of the rice that or paddy that you are measuring, it will not make any difference because they are of the same size. Then, is there a difference between the wooden and the copper one? So the argument, the answer is, the wooden, in terms of the amount of the volume, there is not much of difference, but the wooden one doesn't reflect compared to the copper one, shining copper one. There is a reflection. That's what exactly we are saying. The reflection is what is the problem, and that's what being discussed here in this sloka 32 that we will read again before we go to 33. Ishadbhasanamabhasaha pratibimbastatha vidaha bimbalakshana san bimbavat bhasate sahi. So Ishad Bhasanam, so the limited consciousness, which is called Abhasaha, it's called Chidabhasaha, Pratibimba Tatha Vidihi, and similarly the reflection of the reflected consciousness, Bimba Lakshana Hinaha. So in the reflected consciousness, which is Chidabhasa, it has some properties of the pure consciousness and some properties of the reflecting medium. So it is not completely pure, it is because of the reflection in the medium, so it picks up some properties of the medium. Since it's reflecting the pure consciousness, it picks up the properties of pure consciousness. And this is what Shankara calls it Anyonya Adhyasa. That's what we discussed last time. There is Anyonya Adhyasa. Adhyasa means superimposition of something doesn't belong to you, it's superimposed on you for purpose of transaction, say. So the ring attributes are superimposed on the gold to call it a gold ring. So it is actually gold, but attributes of the ring is ID, OD, form, electricity, all those things are superimposed on the gold in making a gold ring. So gold itself doesn't have these attributes of OD, OD and all that. Right? Electricity of the size, big ring, small ring, all these things. Gold, it's not a property of the gold, but properties of the ring are superimposed on top of a gold to make it that it is a ringly gold or a bangly gold or a necklacey gold. So gold itself is taking different attributes depending upon that which is being superimposed, the form. So attributes of the form, same attributes of the buddhi reflecting medium are getting superimposed. At the same time, attributes of the gold is also superimposed there in the ring. It's a self-shining, it's non-corrosive, or its value, some weight of it, substantiality, all that is coming from the gold, and attributes of the ring are coming, and that's what is called superimposition or mutual superimposition. In the same way, the pure consciousness is I am existent conscious entity coming from the pure consciousness, which is the original consciousness, Sakshi. But also I am picking up the attributes of the buddhi, because attributes of the buddhi is, it is limited by space-wise, time-wise, object-wise, and depending upon how much knowledge it has, ignorance and the amount of information it has, and so on and so forth. So there are varieties of buddhis, and all the agitations and everything else that are raga dveshas are there. All that is part of the buddhi are being superimposed on the conscious entity. So when I say I am having limited buddhi, so buddhi properties have become my properties. Consciousness' property also become my property, because I am conscious entity, I am existent entity. What I don't know is I am happiness entity, I don't know, because that's not is being borrowed in. Therefore, it is Ananda comes only when I recognize that Aham Brahmasmi. That means I am not limited by the Desa Kala Vastu, I am infinite. When I recognize it, then Ananda also is being claimed also. So here there are mutual attributes of one on that, and that's what essentially being pointed out in these slokas now. So we go to 33, and this is the continuation of the idea of mutual anyonya adhyasa. Anyo superimposition, the consciousness part of it is superimposed, and the inert aspect of buddhis are superimposed, or limitations of the buddhi are superimposed, and that's how you have a limited conscious entity now, and that's what is being discussed now. Number 33. Sasangatva vikarabhyam bimbalakshanahinata spurarupatvametasya bimbavat bhasanam viduhu. So etasya means chidabhasasya. So we are referring to the reflected consciousness. Sasangatva vikarabhyam, because of the association with the body, the intellect, and through the intellect the mind, and the mind and intellect through that all the pranas, and all the way to the gross body, sukshma. So all the koshas come into picture, the vijnanamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, and annamaya kosha. So this is bimba lakshana hinata. It does not have the pure consciousness, it's only reflected consciousness with the limitations of spura rupatvam etasya bimbavat bhasanam mithyaha. So the bimba lakshana hinata spurti rupatvam. So the illumination aspect of it, pure illumination aspect is gone, and it's only reflected attributes. So reflected light depends on the reflecting medium. Even though pure light is the same, depending on the medium, reflection is. So even though pure consciousness is infinite and it's ever present and limitless, but because of the reflecting medium, the reflection gets limited, and Chidabhasa becomes limited. And that is essentially the property of borrowing the property of the reflecting medium in the reflected consciousness. Bimbavat bhasanam, the pure consciousness is a shining one, but limitations of this one is also I am bearing. Like a sunlight, I am seeing the moonlight also. In fact, it's cooler, but at the same time, I am picking up the shape of the moon, since that is a reflecting medium, and any impurity of the moon also coming in, and that is the property of the moon is also getting superimposed. Now we go to 34. Nahi dhi bhava bhavitvad, navidhi bhava bhavitvad, abhasosti dhiya pratak, abhasosti dhiya pratak, iti ched alpame voktam, iti ched alpame voktam, dhirapyevam swadehataha, dhirapyevam swadehataha. Now together, nahi dhi bhava bhavitva abhasosti dhiya pratak iti ched alpame voktam dhirapyevam swadehataha. So now the Avachedavada makes an objection and says, in my case I have no problem, because all this pot wall is enclosed with pot space, and pot space is not affected by the pot walls, because the same space, and it is unaffected by the pot walls, and therefore it is the space of the pot doesn't depend on the pot walls. Even without the pot walls, the same space is there, but it's part of the total space. So from the point of that, in the case of Chidabhasa, it depends upon the reflecting medium, and therefore you have a limitation, and reflection depends on the reflecting medium. Without the reflecting medium, you cannot have reflection. That's what the statement is. So, nahi dhi bhava bhavitvad, without being dependent upon the dhiyaha, on the buddhi, the nasti, the abhasaha nasti, the reflection cannot occur. So essentially, asti pruthak nahi, since it's not different from the reflection. Iti ched, if you say like that, so if it is a Purvapaksha objection by the Avachedavadin, then in that case it says, iti ched alpame voktam, you have not really said much. Alpame voktam means you have said very little. That means your objection is not a big, you have not said anything, because even the cannot exist. Even for you also, you say it is enclosed in the buddhi. If enclosed consciousness is not a reflection they are talking about, just enclosed and conditioned consciousness by conditions of the wall. Just like the rooms, I say this is a room, this is a bedroom space, and this is a bathroom space, and this is a kitchen space. How is it conditioned? It's not that I am creating some space there, some reflection of space. It's not a reflection of the space. I just put a walls there, and then call this as a bedroom, calls that as a bathroom, and calls that in the dining room. All the names I am giving, and each name is different from other. What I do in the bathroom is different from what I do in the kitchen, and what I do in the bedroom, and what I do in the dining hall, and so on and so forth. So all these, the divisions are only through the walls. The same way the buddhi make a division of this consciousness which is enclosed in this buddhi, and that consciousness enclosed in the other buddhi, in his buddhi. They are only enclosures, whereas in your case the reflection is different, because reflection depends on the reflecting medium. Existence of a reflection depends on the existence of a reflecting medium, whereas existence of the space doesn't depend on the walls. If walls is there or not, the space is the same. What I am calling, only putting a wall, I am calling this same space which was there before into different names now. So in my case, it doesn't depend upon the walls, the same space, whereas in your case, reflection depends upon the reflecting medium. And if that is your objection, then it says you have not really said anything. Even the buddhi that you are talking about cannot exist independently. It does depend upon the body again. Buddhi cannot be hanging around like somewhere, because Einstein's brain is still there. There is no buddhi there. So it needs something besides the buddhi. You need a matter to enclose the buddhi also. So Einstein's example is just one example, but there the consciousness has left that place. The subtle mind is not there. So buddhi is subtle material, not the brain. Brain is only a cells made up of matter. Buddhi is the intellect, which is different from the brain. So you may have the same brain but different intellects also. So here he is talking about you need the reflection by the instrument, and without the reflection you cannot have. So therefore buddhi is required in order to reflect. This is said, if you say buddhi is required, even for you also, for buddhi you need a body also in order to house the intellect. So therefore you are not really said. Dhirapyevam. So dhira api evam swadehataha. So it depends upon one's sariram. So therefore you are not saying much. So evam api, one needs a body also. You also depends upon something else. It's just a counter argument. We'll go to 35. Dehe mrutepi buddhi ched. Dehe mrutepi buddhi ched. Shastradasti tatha sati. Shastradasti tatha sati. Buddhiranyaschida bhasaha. Buddhiranyaschida bhasaha. Pravesha shrutishu. Pravesha shrutishu srutaha. Pravesha shrutishu srutaha. Together. Dehe mrutepi buddhi ched. Shastradasti tatha sati. Buddhiranyaschida bhasaha. Pravesha shrutishu srutaha. So here again the counter objection by the Avachedavada, that enclosure guy. He says, I can have buddhi without the body. Because who says so? Shastradi. So because Shastradasti, Shastra says when the body is dead, the buddhi leaves the body and travels into other place. As it is traveling, it doesn't have the body. So it is there. So there is an enclosed consciousness because it's a Jiva is still there. So I am moving the part walls to different lokas. In the same way, I am removing the buddhi, and the buddhi contains the information about the vasanas. So it will travel to a different lokas. So therefore, according to the Shastram, even when the body is not there, buddhi can exist. Therefore, I don't depend upon the body. Or body is there, okay. Body is not there also, it's no problem. So he is a counter objection is saying here. Dehe mutepi buddhi ched. Shastradasti tatha sati. So when the body dies, the buddhi is moving, and along with that the consciousness is moving, and it's only the existent part is there in the body. Here Jiva has gone to different lokas. Buddhiranyas chidabhasaha pravesas shrutishu srutaha. So according to the Shruti, the buddhi is separate and anyaha, and the chidabhasa is separate, and pravesha, entering into it, is separately discussed in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and this is Upapravesha, where there is the reflection coming separately, and therefore you cannot say that the buddhi intelligence is coming separately from the reflected consciousness is separated out of the buddhi, and therefore that's what is being discussed there. And therefore the space and the buddhi are completely different entities. There is no reflection required according to the Avachedavada. So if that is the objection, that being outlined again in the next sloka, and the Abhasavad in response to that, 36. Dhiyuktasya pravesaschet. Dhiyuktasya pravesaschet. Naitareye dhiyah prutak. Naitareye dhiyah prutak. Atma pravesham sankalpya. Atma pravesham sankalpya. Pravishta iti giyate. Pravishta iti giyate. Together. Dhiyuktasya pravesaschet. Naitareye dhiyah prutak. Atma pravesham sankalpya. Pravishta iti giyate. Sir, you are only quoting little bit of the, you have studied Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, but now study Aitareya Upanishad also, there has to be some samanvayam has to be there. So there in the Aitareya Upanishad, it's made even more clear. It says, Dhi yuktasya pravesasya. If you think that the body, the buddhi and enclosure are separately entering together, and there is the subtle material, the buddhi and the enclosure, the yuktasya pravesasya. So when the entering into the body, what does it say? It says that the mind is entering, the buddhi is entering into the body. So how is the creation? Creation, according to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says first all 14 worlds are there, and he created the human being, human body, and into that the buddhi has come, and buddhi along with the enclosed consciousness, that's called avachedavada. So buddhi comes with his enclosure. Since buddhi is enclosure, along with the enclosed consciousness, it's entering into the particular body. So therefore no reflection is required in order to understand this entering. This is what the scripture says. So you don't need the scripture, according to scripture, you don't need the reflection theory. So for that, in order to respond that, Dhi yuktasya pravesha iti ched, in case you make an objection to that fact, then it says Aitareyaha Diyaha Prataku Atma Pravesham Sankalpya Pravishta iti giyate. Now please study Aitareya Upanishad. In the Aitareya Upanishad, it says Diyaha Pratak Atma Pravesham. So it is different from the Dhiya. So what is their creation is, if you go to Aitareya Upanishad, first it says gross material is formed, then subtle material is formed, then into that Atma is coming. So what is Pravesham is Atma is coming. So how does Atma comes? Atma is always infinite. How can it come into somewhere? So these Pravesha statements have to be correctly understood. So Pravesha means it's who is Pravesha, who is entering what? Who is entering? In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the body, the buddhi is entering. In the Aitareya Upanishad, the buddhi entered, and then into the buddhi, then the Atma entered. So Atma Pravesham. So Atma Pravesham is what? Atma Pravesham is nothing but the self looking at the body, mind, and say everything is ready, then they are inert by themselves. Therefore, I make it alive by reflecting the consciousness in the buddhi, and through the buddhi, the mind, and through the mind and buddhi, the pranas and the gross, as you go along the grosser scale, depending upon the nature of the Prakriti, nature of the Trigunatmaka Prakriti, reflection keep occurring. So what is entering? It is Atma Pravesha. Please read clearly in the Aitareya Upanishad. It is the entering of Atma. Atma cannot enter because Atma is all infinite. So entering of Atma means that activating this complex that contains the gross body and the subtle body, activating by reflected consciousness. That's what is essentially implies there. So Atma Pravesham Sankalpya Pravishta iti giyate. So entry, having decided to enter Pravishtam, so that is essentially established. Iti giyate, entered has been, Pravishtam means it's clearly declared, but that entering is clearly what is declared. It is the Atma that is really, not the Buddhi with the wall is entering into this one. So you have to be careful there. This is all objections are that Prakriya, how to understand Jiva, Ishvara, but from the point of absolute, all these things are only at the transactional level. Understanding is Aham Brahmasmi, there is no difference between the two schools. That is, whichever way that I understand clearly, a Jiva has to understand that the totality that I am has to be known. There is Aneka Jiva, Eka Jiva Vada, Aneka Jiva Vada, all are things there. So the two schools of thought has to be discussed in terms of a prakriya. Prakriya means a methodology of teaching. methodology of teaching differs, so don't hang on to these methodologies and keep your life struggle in this. Use this in order to understand the truth. The truth is there is all-pervading consciousness, and where nothing is there other than itself. But everything appears to be at the transactional level. At the transactional level, who is a Jiva, what is a Jagat, and what's a Ishvara? Depending upon how your mind can understand, I am pure consciousness, now taking what I am not as I am. That's a fundamental ignorance in all philosophical traditions, in both the Abhasavada, Avachedavada. Ignorance, the Mula Vidya is the problem. Mula Vidya means not knowing myself who I am. That's called, it's not ignorance of chemistry or physics and all that. It's ignorance of my own nature, and therefore I take myself what I am not as I am and transact in the world. Since what I am taking as I am are limited, therefore I feel the limitations of what I am taking, that is body, mind, intellect, as my limitations, and try to solve the limitations of the body, mind, intellect, and by trying to get this and this. So I am unnecessarily creating a problem and try to solve a problem where there is no real problem, and that has become a problem. So this is what the whole philosophy is, and we'll continue that with the sloka 37 after we come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.